the AIBotShow.com. It's the AI Bot Show podcast with me, Carl Franklin, and Brian McKay. Hey, welcome back to the AI Bot Show podcast. If you were watching the AI Bot Show videos on YouTube, it's now a podcast, and it's news-oriented, it's weekly, and we may even change the name. So welcome to whatever it is. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Carl. Another fun week in AI news. Let's get into it.
Okay.
The top story this week is the chip wars. There's a lot going on here. Remember that book, Superintelligence, from 2014? Did that cross your...
Yeah, it was by Bostrom, right?
Yeah, it was a really interesting book at the time, talking about, like all the things that could go wrong, basically. It was kind of a scary book to read. And one of the things that he talked about, and also Ray Kurzweil in The Age of Spiritual Machines, talked about this idea of what they call now fast takeoff, which is the idea that the first AGI that awakens will improve so fast that no other AGI will ever be able to catch up.
And AGI being artificial general intelligence, is that it?
Yeah. Yeah, like strong AI, that's super intelligent AI.
Yeah.
And Kurzweil in his book talked about maybe they'll wake up and just start designing new processors, and they'll iterate on themselves, improve themselves so fast that it'll just be this hockey stick of progress, and that'll be the singularity. It's one of the ways the singularity starts. Well, today, researchers are a lot less concerned about that because of supply chain problems and GPU shortages.
No. We learned that the chips are the most important thing, right? The GPU chips.
Right. So if that AGI woke up today, it would wake up, and the Eye of Sauron would turn upon the video cards and find that there are none.
Right. Yeah. The first thing it's going to say is, hey, I want to go to the gym and work out to increase my brain capacity. Give me some GPUs to eat. Oh, what's the matter? The stores are empty.
Yeah. So they're a little less concerned. Elon Musk actually spoke about this on YouTube. We'll give a link to the YouTube video. And he said that he's talking about XAI, his new AI company, and he said the GPUs are, quote, considerably harder to get than drugs. And based on what I've seen, I can only infer that he's gotten into both.
Probably right.
So
that explains it.
So there's this shortage of, especially video, this special kind of RAM called HBM, high bandwidth memory, is very scarce, and we need it for everything interesting: training, fine tuning, actual inference itself, the generation of text and images. That's all. We need that for everything.
So what is HBM? What's that?
So it's this dense stacked RAM. They literally have like 8 RAM, now up to 12 RAM dies stacked on top of each other, often right on top of a GPU or CPU, which is what OpenAI apparently does.
Yeah.
We have a video where a engineer there talked at length about it, and they have their RAMs directly on top of their CPUs for maximum performance. Mm-hmm. And so, this week, actually just yesterday, Wednesday, OpenAI had to cancel new subscriptions to ChatGPT because there's just too much demand and not enough of this stuff. So this is consistently a problem. Think about how much money that must cost.
I've noticed that it's been very slow, and I thought it was because my context was getting too big. So I started a new conversation, and it's really slow again. And it's because everybody's hitting it, and there's only so many GPUs.
There's only so many, and who knows how many they have? Tens of thousands, maybe hundreds.
Who knows? Yeah.
So, Nvidia announced on Monday the H200, which is a next generation, super high end, video card. And it includes 141 gigs of HBM3, which is the next generation memory.
Whoa.
Yes, the previous generation. So the H100, which is the current sort of heavyweight in the space that everyone's trying to get, they only had 80 gigs of HBM2E. So this is much more powerful, and it uses less actual energy. So that's nice.
Wow.
So, interesting thing with China, just some dynamics that are out there. So we have new trade. The U.S. has new trade restrictions that say that Nvidia can't sell these chips to China, and those export restrictions canceled like $5 billion in sales. And that happened in late October. And just in the last week, Nvidia responded with 3 new chips designed specifically to bypass those restrictions. So all of Nvidia's stuff is made in Taiwan, which is so close to China. It's very interesting geopolitics happening there.
So it's really just selling to China. That's the problem, not having China create any of these things.
Correct. We are trying to limit their access to the highest level of technology.
Okay, so we know how World War III will start.
I mean, there are reasons why we are trying to bring,
I know you're not laughing.
Bring this type of manufacturing back to the U.S. Not back. I don't think it was ever here, but to bring it to the U.S.
Yeah.
So also, Microsoft announced 2 new chips this week. Okay. Maya 100 is the interesting one here.
And it's Maya, M-A-I-A.
Yes. We don't have a lot of details on it, but this is something they're not going to sell. They intend to use it internally for GitHub Copilot, which is one of their companies, GitHub, and also OpenAI will get access to it. We don't know exactly what the deal is with it, but it should help with the chip shortage because they can just make an order for however many they want and they should be able to get them, apparently. Worth noting that GPU-based architectures are not the only possible way forward for AI. They just happen to be a good fit because they have a lot of cores and they're great at parallelism.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the chip wars.
Why don't we take a quick break and we'll come back with more of the AI Bot Show podcast right after this. And we're back. You're listening to the AI Bot Show podcast with me, Carl Franklin, and that's Brian McKay. We just got done with the chip wars. Are we moving on to this week in hallucinations?
Yes, sir.
It's a new bit.
Maybe it probably could be confabulation. No. Maybe that's the name, Confabulation Weekly. Maybe I don't know. That doesn't have the right ring, but Vectera announced a way of they have a hallucination leaderboard. And there's a pretty good article called Measuring Hallucinations in RAG Systems, where they talk about their methods and everything. But basically it works by summarizing news articles and checking for hallucinations. So they give it these long form news articles and they say, summarize this. And then they check to see if it made anything up or did anything dangerous. And the bottom line is that GPT-4, is at the top of the leaderboard with a 3% hallucination rate, which is relatively low. Llama 270 is 5.1. So, that's, pretty good. At the very bottom is Google Palm Chat, which is 27.2% hallucination rate. Not that good.
No.
Yeah.
So we learned by using, if you go back and watch the videos, by using the playground that you can turn up a lever to, sort of. Well, how would you define this lever? It increases likelihood of hallucinations but also gives you more interesting content. And I guess maybe it's for if you're trying to do fictional stuff. What is that lever I'm talking about?
I think you are probably talking about temperature.
Temperature.
The way the generation of text works is the model is actually predicting the next most likely token or word. Let's say it's an easy way to put. It's not really a word, but close enough.
Could be 2 words.
Yep. And the way, and you can actually go in there and tell it to turn on probabilities, and it will show you a bunch of possible tokens and how likely they are. And if you turn temperature all the way down to 0, it will always pick the most probable one. If you start to turn it up, it will become more likely to choose something from a wider range of probabilities,
right?
Which makes it basically turning up temperature can make it it feels a little more creative.
Right. But good for writing stories and getting ideas.
Yeah. But also
increases hallucinations.
It can go off the rails. It can get repetitive. Weird things can happen. So,
yeah.
But
you don't have that temperature control in ChatGPT, do you?
No, not directly. ChatGPT, you have a lot less control over the settings like that. You get that stuff in Playground and when you're dealing directly with the API. So, you're not going to have that in Chat. It's just set up the way they feel is optimal. And,
right.
It's probably a pretty standard setting, like 1 or whatever, 0.7, somewhere in that ballpark. Also, to limit hallucinations, the real way to do it is, as they say in this write-up, is to use retrieval augmented generation. So you tell it, you give it the content that you're working with. And if it has the facts in there, the way they put it is actually kind of nice. It's like an open book test instead of a closed book test. So if you tell it, like the wind speed of an unlated African sparrow or whatever, and then ask it what the wind speed is, well, that's an interesting question. But if you tell it and then ask it, it will be much more likely to give you a correct answer.
Yeah. Or if you provide context and, however that is, and the context increases in accuracy or in size or scale with every interaction. Take the output of one prompt, use that with the input of the next prompt, etc. Did I tell you that I'm working on a tool with ChatGPT right now to process drum tracks? Oh, yeah, I think I did tell you, but we haven't mentioned it on the show.
Yeah, that's really...
Yeah, this is a really sort of rad kind of thing because I started from scratch and I said, create me an app, a command line app that uses an audio, blah, blah, blah. And then I slowly introduced the features that I would write in the right order, and people are thinking, you might be thinking, well, it's no fair that this AI wrote this thing. No, I'm writing it with the help of the AI. Like if I couldn't just say, hey, write me a drum quantizer algorithm and it would just happen. That's not how it works. You have to know, you have to be a programmer. Like you have to know what order to do things in. And the first thing we need to do is just like when you write a project, the difference is that when it comes down to the details, you're not struggling with the details. It can help you with those things. And you can look those things over and test them and refine them and say, oh no, I want to refactor this. Let's do this instead. And it will help. But I mean, it's the same process that a developer goes through. It's just like having an expert programmer when you don't always have the answers at your fingertips and don't want to spend hours looking for them online.
Yeah, we should do one of us should do a watch me code kind of thing where we show how we work. The way you work with it sounds like it's a little different than how I do. The idea of starting with a brand new console app, having it actually generate the base code for that and then work with it is different than what I've done. And I wonder if you get better results that way. It's pretty interesting.
I'm pretty close right now. I won't talk about it too much, but I've got some constraints. I've always got the same number of drum tracks. We can assume they're going to be 16-bit and 44.1 and 7 of them are mono and the overheads are stereo, and they're never going to be longer than maybe 10 minutes. So that means we can load things them up into memory and deal with memory directly. I did something to normalize the tracks. I did something to clean up or gate the toms so that it takes out all the rumble in between tom hits. That's all working. And now I'm working on quantizing, which is really a complex task, to seamlessly move drum hits across all tracks to line up to beats and quantize segments is very challenging. But I tried this myself several years ago and I gave up. It was just too difficult to wrap my head around. But with this, I'm advancing very quickly.
That is what I've seen too. So when I made that, we did that episode where I made that crazy gladiator game, and there's quite a bit of sound in there. And in audio is pretty like low level. It doesn't just, it's not like, hey, play a sound. It's like you have to write an engine, and it's very powerful. And there were some things that came up, like I had to do a resampler, which might have stopped me cold.
Yep.
Because I had samples that I got somewhere, and then samples that were being generated by my text-to-speech engine. And
all different
and like
bit rates and stuff.
Different bit rates. That's right. One was like 44.8 and one was something else. One was super high quality. And anyway,
48K.
You can't just play that at the same time through an audio. It has to be the same. So you have to write a resampler. And I don't know that I would have been able to do that, but it helped me do it. And it didn't get it right on the first try. And then when it was done, it wasn't very, it was like converting things to get there. And then I was able to like refactor it into something that looked a little more reasonable, but we got there, and I don't know if I would have without it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm experiencing too.
Okay.
So it gives me hope that, software developers are still need to be part of the equation. It's just that if you take advantage of this AI, you'll be more productive.
Yes. In a second, we'll talk about GitHub workspaces, which challenges some of those thoughts a little bit. We'll talk about that in a second.
Oh, by the way, smack.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to have to come up with a new thought about taking our jobs away. But let's put a pin on that for a second.
Okay.
So back to model capability news. So GPT-4 Turbo is out in ChatGPT. So that's what you've been working with in the last few days. And that means expect longer conversations, and it's got 128K context. So that's great for what you're doing.
Yep.
Although it'll be interesting to see what happens as your conversation gets really long, and we know that the reliability starts to drop after
I've already noticed it. Yeah, I've already noticed that it doesn't. I gave it sort of the overall plan when I started, and it's forgotten it. So I have to keep reminding it of little things.
Got it.
Little things like, please comment your code samples. I would like to be able to just say that to ChatGPT on day one and have it do that for every code sample, but I always have to remind it now. And I guess the playground would be better because, the system prompt, you could put all of that stuff in the system prompt.
Well, some of the new stuff, there are ways that you can make a bot and tell it, these are my preferences. I actually have a little SQL bot that I use when I work with SQL Server, and it has things in there like, this is my naming convention, and I just, whenever I want to generate transact SQL and add a new table or whatever, I just drop this in there as the beginning of the conversation and start telling it what to do, and it's pretty good after that.
So, speaking of bots, one of the new features that they announced were these little GPTs. In other words, highly specialized bots. Yeah, you give it system prompt and knowledge. And then, so here's my experience with that. I used that to help develop some software for a friend of mine who it was just a simple math thing. And when I closed it, it didn't save the conversation like GPT does. It was gone.
Oh, that's weird.
So it might be because it's in beta today. It might be different, but when I was using it a few days ago, it just completely lost my conversation, which is not good.
Well, they have the threads. Threads are part of the assistance API. You got to think they're trying to fix that. I have been seeing.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
I have been seeing throughout the week people are talking about, this thing works better now. That's way better than it was just a few days ago. So they're iterating over there fast. So in a few weeks it might be better. A couple other things. xAI, Elon's company, announced that Grok will have API access, which is interesting because it has access to the Twitter feed. So we'll see how that plays out.
So on .NET Rocks, Richard Campbell and I talked to one of my heroes of podcasting, Grant Barrett, who does a show called Away with Words. And I asked him, so what do you think about Twitter closing access to the API or upping it? And he says it's just heartbreaking because he's a linguist and he's also a lexicographer. And so one of the things that he used Twitter for was to you can actually use the API to find the very first usage on Twitter of a word geographically. Right?
Whoa.
So the very first usage of the word, snickerdoodle, whatever it is, some slang, he could use Twitter API to trace that to a particular place in time, which is just amazing. And he was so upset that it was going away. So maybe with XAI's API, it may even be priced out of his range, but at least might be there.
That's a really interesting angle on that. Other things I've been seeing are some really wild stuff happening with image generation. Actually, this is a bit of a digression, but have you seen that rock paper scissors video from Corridor?
No.
Well, they basically they have a flow. They made this awesome anime that's like this super epic version of rock paper scissors where everything is super dramatic. These two brothers are like, they call it holy combat and they're fighting for the crown. But the basic flow is they record themselves on a green screen and feed the footage into Stable Diffusion and make an anime out of it. And they're refining the process and they're releasing videos about how that works. And it's just super cool.
Wow.
What I had down in my notes though was, a Twitter thread where people are drawing, they're doing wireframes and drawings and passing it into GPT Vision and it's generating code.
What?
Like web pages and actual working code in some cases.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's powerful things going on there for sure.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. LangChain also announced a collaboration with Microsoft. Sounds like their Langsmith will be on Azure. It seems like maybe they're getting some funding. It was pretty vague.
Can you remind us what LangChain is?
Yeah, LangChain is a framework for creating apps using large language models. It has a lot of tools built into it. Microsoft actually has a competitor to it called Semantic Kernel that I think it's still in beta.
Yeah, they were showing it off at .NET Conf just the other day, the release of .NET 8. They were showing off Semantic Kernel.
I've heard people say that it's good. I haven't gotten hands-on with it yet.
What they showed is a demo of an e-commerce site where people, it's a Blazor site, believe it or not, where people are buying things. And rather than, using the UI to search through the catalog, you can open a chat window and say, hey, I'm looking for an outfit that's all dark green. What things do you have in dark green? It'll give you like 100 things. And it's like, show me green backpacks. And then you get 3 or 4 of them. And then you can say, add item number 2 to my cart. And it just does that. And then you just continue asking questions in real English and finding products, refining them. I mean, kind of like you do on Amazon now when you search for things. But definitely you can't just say, add this to my cart in a chat window and it does it. Or add items 1, 5, and 7 to my cart.
Got it.
Not that it's, I mean, this is like first world problems. What, you can't push the add to cart button, but they were using semantic kernel to do that. So that they obviously had vectorized the data in the database and they were, accessing it.
Yeah. And that's what it's good for. LangChain, it's cool to see them succeeding because they were very early to this whole party.
Yeah.
Like way back, they were, making these great tools for agent-like interactions, and their platform, it's Python based and it has a lot of tools in there for like chunking and working with vector databases. So very powerful stuff. And it's interesting that Microsoft is drawing them closer. They definitely have big plans for AI, no question.
Cool.
Let's talk about GitHub Universe. That is GitHub's big conference that just wrapped up. Okay. And they have they dropped some bombs. And I haven't had time to fully process all of this yet, but they are trying to transform themselves. So obviously they have GitHub Copilot already, but they're leaning into that even more and trying to turn into this vast AI powered developer platform.
Right.
And the vision is really interesting because they've got your code, So they are in a position to do things that nobody else likely is. Mm-hmm. So the basic announcements are they've got a GPT-4 version of Copilot now. Their code generation is going to get better, which thank God, because it's pretty good, but it's wrong in annoying ways a lot today.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love it, but God, like,
you're
please
always saying,
look at,
no, that's not what I'm thinking.
Or no, that's not like the correct, like, just look at my code.
It's a wrong assumption. Yeah.
Right. You're
Why
like, so
would I
close.
want to do that? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's like if you ask it a really hard question, like make a resampler, you'll get there, but then it goes to like suggest the name of a variable and it gets the capitalization wrong. It's like, just look at, well, yeah. So that sounds like
comment. You put a comment. I'd like to write a routine and it fills it out, calculates the mating habits of gophers. Okay.
Yeah. It's like,
press tab.
That's amazing.
What? Yeah.
But it's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing that really caught my attention was GitHub Copilot Workspace, which looks like an Asana type of change management system, you know, where you're tracking features and keeping track of how you work through them, except you put in a feature and then it populates the steps to get it done, and you can edit the steps if it's wrong about what it understands you to be doing. And then it sounds like it actually executes the steps because it has your code, you know, like you've got your code hosted in GitHub. So it executes the steps.
Wait a minute. By executing the steps, do you mean it actually fills in the pseudocode with real code, or does it actually run your comments as code?
It looks like it's going to try to do the steps necessary to perform the feature request.
Okay, so it's not writing code for you like GitHub Copilot would.
I think it's doing it much more directly, like it's just changing the code.
No. I don't want mystery code running on my behalf. I want to see the source.
Yeah, it says, because the workspace is fully editable, you're able to steer the AI in the exact direction you want while benefiting from its understanding of the issue's intent and your entire code base. To validate that the change behaves as expected, Copilot Workspace enables you to build, run, and test the code. If it encounters an error, it offers to fix it automatically. It's like a pair programming session with a partner that knows about every inch of the project, and on and on. As long
as I can see the code that it generates, then I'm okay. I don't like black boxes though. I don't like, here, let me do that for you. I'll be right back.
No. Not in 2023. No. Yeah, I mean, wow. So, you know, we were talking about how this is not going to take your job, and I don't think it is, but wow, we are headed in that direction.
Yeah, well, okay. I mean, specialty programming always has to be done, but maybe some of these, line of business applications will be certainly sped up with automation like this.
Yeah, you would think. And the result should be that we're elevated to work at a higher level in time.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe eventually the most annoying parts of the work will start to go away, and we'll be directing and making sure things work the way they're supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah. I could live with that.
Yeah. It's, but I will say that, if you're listening to this podcast and you are trying to get your head around this, you are doing the right thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Do not pay attention to this.
Yes, you have to pay attention. And what better way than to listen to our podcast? So I guess we'll see you next week.
All right.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for listening. Yeah.
Bye-bye.